Thank you for listening to Jesus Goggles. We are trying to see the world in the lenses of Jesus. In this week's episode, we discussed our relationship with friends. We present this episode in a fun exchange between two friends based on a hypothetical situation.
Hey, I'm here again.
Hey man, you don't look that good. Are you alright?
Yeah, a little mad. Conversation with a friend didn't end so well. We had a disagreement over small things, and I don't know why we both got so upset. I mean, we got into a heated argument, and then we just ended the phone call.
Sorry to hear that. What were you guys talking about, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, it's no biggie. I mean, we were talking about school, and then there was a homework assignment that just took a long time to do, and sometimes people copy off each other's homework, right? But I honestly didn't feel like doing that this time. So for me, I either turn in my work or not at all. But recently, there was this essay we had to write, and it took an entire week for me to write. My friend wasn't going to finish on time, and he wanted to copy off of me. It was like the night before the deadline. Well,
that's definitely a case of plagiarism, and I'm sure your friend knew about it already.
Yeah, obviously, I hope he did. But he seemed to be in a desperate situation. I think it's because his parents were getting mad at him for not focusing on school, and he was just in a really tight situation at that moment. I wanted to help, but I also didn't want to just give my work away, I put a lot of effort into the assignment.
So what did you end up doing?
That's kind of why we started arguing. As a friend, I thought I could help him out, maybe give him some tips or ideas, or so that he can write the whole thing by himself. But it just didn't feel right for me to just give him the whole thing. And then he started getting mad because he wanted me to give my essay away to him.
Man, must have been a pretty rough conversation.
Yeah, it was kind of rough, but I didn't want to be punished for plagiarism, so I told him either get the help from me or just do this, or just not do the assignment, I guess. That's where the talk went a little bit south.
Ouch. I think you did the right thing because it is a rule set by the school, but why are you so down?
Well, he still is my friend, and I wanted him to do well in school too. But following the rule was one thing, but what am I going to do about our friendship? I knew him for more than a decade, and he called me names for not helping him the way he wanted to be helped. Would you have done anything differently?
Well, I think it's a tough case, especially when things are between people who you're close with. That's why it's easy to get our priorities mixed up. Just like I tell you all the time, in a situation like this, when we need an answer, what should we do?
I'm not sure.
Well, seeking answers from God. Remember, as Christians, we have to prioritize what God thinks first instead of what we think is right.
Oh yeah, that's right. I always forget that. I always do the things I always wanted to do.
Yes, and that is the trap set by Satan. Following our routine is the most dangerous thing because we need God's intervention to make things right. So in this case, let's see if the Bible has anything to say. Are you familiar with the story of David and Jonathan?
I know David was a king, but I think that's all I know.
Okay. Before David was a king, Jonathan's dad, Saul, was the king of Israel. Jonathan, who was the firstborn of Saul, would have been the next king if it wasn't for David. But Jonathan was a man of God, and he knew that God was going to make David the next king.
Okay. I'm assuming you're telling me this story because they were friends and they had some ethical problems.
Exactly. As much as Jonathan loved David as a friend, he also had to deal with his father, who wanted to make him the next king. Jonathan was aware that God chose David to become the next king, so Jonathan wanted to protect David when Saul actually wanted to kill David.
Oh, what a bro. I don't think I could do that, my friend taking what is mine. And also at the same time, I have to fight my dad so that he can take what is mine. That's some crazy story.
It's kind of interesting how Jonathan was able to do this. And one evening, Saul was looking for David in a king's dinner banquet, and David wasn't there. Saul was planning to kill David at the time, so Saul actually asked where David was. And Jonathan covered for David so David could escape from Saul. Saul later found out what Jonathan did for David, and he scolded Jonathan by saying that Jonathan wasn't going to become a king if David is alive. Jonathan, knowing what God had planned, told Saul that David did nothing to deserve death. David was a great military general at the time, and people just loved him.
So what happened? I know David became a king in the end, so I guess what Saul said became true? Then what about Saul and Jonathan? Isn't there usually a bloodbath when the new king doesn't come from the same family?
Yes, and that's exactly why Jonathan made a covenant with David. Jonathan had David promise him to protect his family if David becomes the next king. Unfortunately, Saul and Jonathan die in a battle against the Philistines attacking Israel. David was in an exile during that time, so he didn't know what was going on. But when David finally became the king, he wept for Saul and Jonathan, and David later keeps his promise he made with Jonathan. He finds Jonathan's surviving family and gives back everything Jonathan and Saul owned to Jonathan's son.
That's a pretty interesting story. So it seems like Jonathan is a greater person than David. Although I thought David was always the good guy.
The moral I wanted to share in this story is the depth of friendship and what a true friendship should look like. What did you learn from the story?
I mean, it's kind of crazy the length Jonathan went for David. I mean, if I were in Jonathan's shoes, I would have shared the same ideas as Saul, thinking that killing David would guarantee my throne. But Jonathan didn't. It's almost weird to think about how he was able to give up his own seat and do what was right before God. That's a lot of sacrifice. Fighting for a friend meant fighting against his parents, and that's a really tough decision that Jonathan made.
And I agree. I don't think anyone can easily do what Jonathan and David did. Keeping promises here shows how much respect they had for each other. Now, isn't that a wholesome friendship?
Man, I mean, to be honest, I always thought I was a good friend, but I don't think I am not that great of a friend anymore. I don't know how far I can go for my friend like Jonathan.
Do you feel any regrets ending the phone call that way?
Sort of. I mean, I think it was right for me not to give my friend my essay, but I should have been more wise about my words. Perhaps there were other things I could do to help him out.
Do you have any ideas on how you could have helped him?
Maybe if I knew the essay was going to take so long, I probably should have worked with him to begin with. I mean, if we worked together to build ideas and make outlines together, I think he could have done the assignment fairly easily and by himself. Like, he and I were too busy doing our own things and really didn't look out for each other.
Yeah, it happens. The amount of effort, time, and attention you put into a relationship is what makes it last. If you want to be a good friend, your input must be there. Now, it's important to remember that the other end also has to do it too. Otherwise, it'll be just really unbalanced.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Maintaining this relationship is what makes life difficult. I think when you're trying to, or well, at least when you think you're close with someone, you may not be. And that might be because one side's doing all the work. Like, if in that case, everyone knows what's going to happen, the relationship's just going to fall apart then.
Exactly. And I hope you and your friend don't get into this type of situation again. I mean, you guys have been friends for more than a decade. That means a lot, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been through a lot together. Like, we had all the highs and lows. It would really be a true shame if things went sour between us just because of one assignment. I have to make up with him first because I think he still is mad at me because I didn't give him my homework.
Yeah. It's really easy for us to treat close people with less respect sometimes because we're just really comfortable with them. I know you made an ethical choice, but that doesn't mean your friendship should be over. Remember that we have to watch our language and actions. I think what offends a lot of people these days is when Christians do things totally differently.
Yeah, I'm totally guilty of that, and also judging fellow Christians to do so. I mean, we always hate hypocrites, but we are often hypocrites ourselves. I feel like I made a bad example of my friend because of the fact that my friend isn't a Christian. Like, he might be judging me a lot.
Yeah, I know we can't live perfectly, but we have to try living our best. Following the footsteps of Jesus often sounds just crazy, but it's something we all should strive for. Don't let a failure like this make you fall.
Yeah, I won't. I think I have a better idea of how to handle the situation from now on. I didn't think the Bible had so much application in my life, but, I guess I'm wrong.
Well, that's the spirit. Let me know if there's anything else I can help you with.
I think that's it for today. Thanks for sharing ideas with me.
My pleasure. I guess I'll see you next time then.
Yeah, talk to you later.
Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with an episode on our relationship with parents. Jesus Goggles is a podcast sponsored by God in Us Community, a 501c3 nonprofit Christian mission organization serving the youth and young adults.